if we have a look at the poem closely, you can see there's stanza 1. So in fact what we have are 5 stanzas, and they follow this pattern that you're looking at with stanza 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. So 4 lines are called a quatrain. So 5 stanzas, each one is a quatrain. And look at the rhyme scheme: smolder and plies and shoulder and flies. A, B, A, B. So you've got that rhyme scheme and a fairly strict rhythm. When in the sun the hot red acres smolder. Then we have that little sort of extra. We have that little extra bit here. Down where the sweating gang its labor plies. A girl flings down her hoe, and from her shoulder, there's the extra bit there, unslings her child tormented by the flies. So you've got a fairly strict rhythm, and I think this very formal, controlled structure, for me it gives weight to the poem. It's a serious poem with a serious message, and I get that gravity, that seriousness out of this strictly controlled 5 stanzas, quatrains, and this pattern of unstressed followed by stressed. That's one I am. So these I ams with the little extra syllable there. So it also, for me, when I said that the poem is prophetic, it's prophesying a time when the Zulu people will rise. I feel it's got that prophetic insight, which makes us believe in the accuracy of what the speaker's saying, both literally here in what he's describing and in the future. So let's look more closely at that stanza. I always ask my students, where is the speaker? And if you start with down where the sweating gang, the speaker must start at least somewhere up here on the height. And he's looking down and he's seeing the people in the fields, and he calls them a gang. So they're a gang of workers. Don't think Tsotsi gang. Think a group of people who are working. So we've got Zulu laborers in the fields, and they're sweating because it's so hot. So you start with the physical atmosphere at the beginning of the poem. And the atmosphere is incredibly hot. And that obviously also goes to a kind of political atmosphere, which is the oppression. So the atmosphere is oppressive, hot, oppressive. And we have the image of fire, smolder. What smolders is a fire. When the fire is almost out, but there's still some fire there. And it's preparing us for the violence of the end of the poem, which is predicted. That prophecy that I've been talking about is a prophecy of violence. So when in the sun, so we've got the hot, oh, and red is also part of the fire. Red because this is the clay of South African soil, but it's also the red of the fire and the violence. Down where the sweating gang its labor plies, a girl flings down her hoe. So she's hoeing. A hoe is it's got a wooden handle. It's a farm implement. And it's got this wooden handle, and then it's got a sharp blade at the end of it, and you use it for cutting into the ground. She flings down the hoe. Look at the flings. She's really irritated. The flies, the heat, the sweating, and she throws down that hoe in exasperation. Do you know the word exasperation? That's real annoyance and frustration. She throws it down, and from her shoulder she unslings the child, and the child's sweat has attracted the flies to it, and they buzz around him irritating him. So she throws down that hoe. She's had enough. She's going to feed her baby. Now, if the observer is up here at the beginning of the poem, look at how he's moved here. She takes him to a ring of shadow pooled by thorn trees. So you've got your thorn trees, sort of like this, and the shadow is around the thorn trees. So she chooses a place where there will be some shade to protect her and the baby. But notice we are much closer to her now. So the speakers come down off the heights, and he's like here, he's close to her, where she is feeding her baby. And we have the word pooled, which is very appropriate because we associate pools with water that brings some kind of relief, and in the same way the shade brings refreshment, peace, relief from this pounding heat of the sun. Pooled with the blood of ticks, purpled with the blood of ticks, it's not quite clear if it's her nails that are purpled or the thorn trees. A lot of people think that ticks have been taken off and there's a thorn and the person has put the tick onto the thorn to kill it. That's very possible. Or maybe there are stones here and people have squashed the ticks on the stones or on the ground around the tree.